Okay, this is Intro to Archaeology, Part 3. Okay, what is this? How does this relate to you? Let's get it down to Alaska. So, whether you realize it or not, Alaska is one of the most important places archaeologically on the planet right now. Does anybody know why? Probably don't, but it's because of the Bering Land Bridge. So, the part in orange here, if you don't know, is what's called Beringia. Okay, and this was the Bering Land Bridge. Now, what you need to know is archaeologically and scientifically, scientists had figured out how most of the world was populated. So by the 1940s, 1950s, they kind of had it down. But ever since the Americas were discovered, no one could figure out how the people got there. Because guess what? When they were discovered, people were already living there. So there were all kinds of weird theories about where the Native Americans came from. Some felt they were the lost tribes of Moses. Other people felt they were people from Atlantis. No one knew. So right around 1940s, 1950s, they started looking at all kinds of scientific data. And so no one disputes, and if you don't know what the Bering Land Bridge is, the theory is that about 25,000 years ago, the seas parted, and all of this area here was land. Okay, now we know this from geological information, botanical, paleontological. They found mammoths with flowers in their stomachs. So we know that this was land at one time. So the theory was that people were traveling from Asia over here, following the large game, which were mammoth and mastodons, kind of came through Alaska. Some stayed, became the natives of Alaska, and some kept going, and they became the Indians of North and South America. Okay, as an aside, way back when, I threw this in because I thought it was interesting. Dinosaurs used to be here, but that's way before human beings were on the planet. Here are pictures of mammoths and mastodons. I don't know why they didn't come out, but we had saber-toothed cats here, we had camels, so all kinds of animals when it was Beringia. So again, according to this theory, early man came across following the mammoths. Some stayed in Alaska, some kept going, and this is what people have come to understand. Science was happy, they solved the problem. Life was good, and everybody learned about the Bering Land Bridge theory. And that made Alaska really important. And here's kind of a map, again, showing how this worked. So some people kind of came over this way. Some followed the northern coast, became the Eskimos, and some just kept going south, became the Indians of North and South America. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of a problem these days with the Bering Land Bridge theory. Okay, if we go with this theory, where should we expect to find the oldest sites? Well, we should expect to find them in Alaska, right? So just so you know, the oldest sites we have in Alaska are probably about 25,000 years old. Give or take. We're not 15,000. Broken Mammoth is a famous site by Nenana. Again, about 20,000 years old. So, you know, that's pretty old. Unfortunately, though, in about the last 10 to 15 years, they have found much older sites, 40,000 years old, the tip of South America called Monte Verde, and in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, at a place called the Meadowcroft Rock Shelter. So that has really put this whole Bering Land Bridge theory in jeopardy if we're finding much older sites in South America than Alaska. So what does this do to our theory? Well, it kind of blows it right out of the water. Back to this slide here. The reasons are varied. Now, you might want to remember these. You might want to think about them. If this were a real class, an in-class lecture, I'd ask students, okay, so why are we not finding the oldest sites in Alaska? Well, Alaska is huge. Finding a needle in a haystack. The digging season is very short. We're lucky if we could do June, July, and August. There's a lot of political issues. There's a lot of land we can't get to. The other reason is much of Alaska is inaccessible. Can't get there. Most of the sites have been found off roads. A lot of Alaska you can't get to. So this causes problems, makes it very, very expensive. That's another reason. A big one is, where do you think most of the sites are? Where is most of Beringia now? Well, it's underwater, right? So that's a big problem. Other problems are these people were nomadic. So did they schlep around a lot of heavy stuff? Not really. So they're using perishable items. They're using baskets, furs. Do these things preserve for 40,000 years? No. Okay, the other problem is that because these people were nomadic, all you're going to find are campsites. What's a campsite? Well, you're going to find a fire pit, which is a hearth. Okay. You might find some broken pieces of projectile points, but in the grand area of Alaska, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. So there might be some reasons why it's so hard to do archaeology in Alaska, and why perhaps we haven't found really old sites yet. So just so you know, scientists are rethinking the migration routes. So now what they're saying is, okay, maybe there are some people that came across the land bridge, but to explain the older sites on the East Coast, they're saying, well, not everyone had to have come from Asia. Maybe some people came from Europe. Maybe some people came down the coast. What we know is that the Eskimos and the Aleuts, the earliest sites that we find up here, they're already adapted to a maritime culture. And then to explain the sites in South America, they're saying, well, maybe people came across the Pacific from places like Australia. So the point is, we are back to square one in trying to reconfigure how North and South America were populated, which also then makes Alaska really important archaeologically.